all set to go.
For those of you who haven't listened to the podcast up until this point, Drunk is a person that Ben and I don't know, who started listening because I believe he was looking for the least listened to podcasts that were or
It was
live
it
streams.
was yeah, it was on YouTube and he searched for fewest viewers for
Ah,
current live streams and surprise surprise we were up there at the top.
so Drunk is the username of this person. That we are not disparaging their character in any way, shape, or form. Um,
Correct. But
it
he
is.
coincidentally lives in your region.
Yes, he does live in my region. We can share something. Right now, I live in the St. Louis area. Ben and I, of course, met when I was living in his area. Haha.
Seattle,
Seattle,
Washington.
Washington. That's right. And so I I do think that it is interesting. We now have a sort of a Midwest perspective. Um, we will, I believe, Ben, that you will agree that my opinions, while I'm still a very liberal person, did get sort of more conservative just by osmosis after living here for a while. I think it was one of the things when I said that maybe Hitler was wrong about something. I don't remember how I phrased it, but I
I
phrased it
don't.
in a way that Stephen McCandless immediately clocked. It might not have been Hitler specifically. It might have just been fascism in general.
I
Like I
honestly
was
don't remember what that was.
unironically both sidesing some sort of
Right.
very black and white issue.
You do. I don't recall any of your opinions over there becoming more conservative just by osmosis, but I do know that you have become more accepting of other viewpoints because of, and this was pre-pandemic when you had coworkers in close proximity.
Yeah, in fact, I was just about to say the specific thing, and of course, I don't talk about my work, and I don't talk about specific people at my work, but there's a specific person at my work, um, at my I'll say at my old job, um, the place where I worked, there was somebody that I worked with who is very much on the right, very much not only on the right, but sometimes espousing things that one might expect from a QAnon truther type person, right? But he was, I know, I know this is going to sound completely, but he was polite, a hard worker, um, open to other viewpoints when it came to work, um, and just willing to take time to explain things. Very even-handed with everyone that he dealt with. All that kind of stuff. None of it. Basically, it's the thing that you hope for just about any coworker. Very very nice, very accommodating, all that. Only when things went to politics did it become uncomfortable, and even then,
Or like gun
uh,
control or abortion rights or
well, not even any of that. Just like, um, uh, I'm afraid of Antifa, that sort of thing. Like, and me with the opinion of, well, you shouldn't be afraid of Antifa because Antifa just means someone who's anti-fascist.
right.
They're not an organization. The idea that they are one, but I think we've talked about this before. I think that if you start naming a group that doesn't exist and you keep on like putting out that they exist, they will eventually form. The Bernie Bros are another example of something that I was like, I don't know if those guys exist, and then lo and behold, they started to. And I think it's just that, it's a really interesting idea. I'm not saying that you and I should do this, Ben, but I think that you and I could make up a fake type of person, popularize it, and then people would start identifying as that type of person if we were to do it. Um, Yep, he's a real hat and suspenders man. And if we just keep on saying hat and suspenders man as though it means something, eventually we'll find a guy who wears a hat and suspenders and espouses the belief that we attribute to the hat and suspenders man.
That sounds exactly like something a hat suspenders man would try to do.
Oh no, is it me? Hold on, wait 1 second. All right. Oh boy, oh
I
boy. I still have it over here, obviously.
I don't know. I
God,
don't know.
I love this hat, Ben. I love this. For those of you who
I'm
are
glad
on the
you
podcast,
like it.
you can't see. Oh, what do you mean? Are you saying you don't like this hat? It is one of the best ones.
I'm saying
if
I
had my
would
suspenders
not
on,
wear that in public.
You wouldn't. Well, of course not. It's my hat, Ben, and I thank you very much for respecting the autonomy of my hat.
I don't know if I ever met anybody who identified it as a Bernie bro. Like I don't know if I like was if there was a convention of Bernie bros, but
No, I think what happens is other people use it first, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually someone will go, "Okay, I admit it. I'm."
Well, no, see that's what I mean. I never met anybody who's like, okay, I'll admit it. I'm a because like the same with like neck beards. People often get this attribute a certain type of person as a neck beard. But at this point I would assume that neck beards was sort of like, all right, I'm a neck beard, and so it's what I look like.
Yeah,
I just don't see that happening though.
I don't see that happening. Here's another one: reply guy, right? There's a specific reply guy thing. People say, "Oh, this is a reply guy." You do not see people embracing that moniker that much. And I will admit the one person who I saw who said, "Yeah, I guess I'm a Bernie bro," was a woman who was like sort of trying to buck the system, as it were. Like she was saying, "Okay, I guess I fit into this demographic that you've created."
A Bernie bra.
Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Today we've got Bernie bros, but in the 60s it was all about Bernie bras. I don't know. It almost works. You could work it somehow.
There's a comedy show happening in LA that I saw on Facebook.
Yeah, there is. Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's all primarily dudes, and all the proceeds go to, I don't remember exactly what organization gets the proceeds. Some sort of pro-choice organization.
Oh, that's good.
The name of the show is Bro v. Wade.
Oh, geez, that's awesome.
I thought was very clever.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm very glad that you said some pro-choice thing, because for a second I was worried. You hear men and comedy, and it never usually ends up well.
We're pulling together funds to help Louis C.K. out because he's had a really hard time of it lately.
Speaking of pulling together, now here's the thing. I'm still on his mailing list. And what I learned from that is he is playing Madison Square Garden.
I know. He's actually an example of how cancel culture isn't a thing.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I will say about cancel culture is it, like, okay, here's something my wife Jennifer Pratt, also known as Jennifer Fact Checker, on this platform that we call the GudeLaurance podcast. If you listen to older episodes, she participates in it. We were talking about Dennis Miller, and what we had determined, because there's this thing that in comedy, you like people will start catering to the right when they stop being funny or whatever. And what we kind of came up with was that Dennis Miller really didn't change that much. The world just kind of changed around him, and therefore he got this new audience because they were the ones that kind of still liked the thing that he was doing. Like if you look at The Daily Show, right? There's this one thing where they were talking about Dennis Kucinich, right?
Yeah.
And Dennis Kucinich said, this is back when it was Jon Stewart, said that that he would absolutely um, invite a trans person in a leadership position in his campaign. And the Daily Show made fun of him for making that statement. Things have changed. They would not do that now. So if Jon Stewart wanted to still tell that joke, that type of joke, and thought that it was funny and all that, he would find it. There would be people who would find it funny, but he would have switched his audience
That's the thing
completely.
about, well, that's the thing about comedy, right? The world has changed, time has changed, comedy has changed with it. If you're a good
Yep.
comedian now, older comedians like, I guess Dennis Miller, I didn't really know his comedy outside of the Weekend Update, but people like Roseanne Barr are kind of leaning heavily into that. I think Bill Maher even is kind of floating more to the right.
Yeah.
And they strike me as comedians who just refuse to adapt.
Right. We also talked about Alex Jones. Uh, Alex Jones. I think I've mentioned this before on the show, but Alex Jones in the 1980s was someone that people on the left, like, they didn't necessarily always like him, but they gave him more of a benefit of the doubt because at the time George H.W. Bush was the president, and he was talking about how George H.W. Bush was ushering in the new world order and was a lizard person and all that, and everyone thought that it was hilarious because he was our enemy, and so we were like, haha, what a great job this guy is doing. Have you listened to him? He's crazy. And again,
Doesn't matter. He's our
stayed
crazy.
stayed on the same bullshit, but the world changed and he sort of stayed the same. So now, he's um well, I will say that, I mean, he broke off with Donald Trump for a while because he can't maintain one of two things, either the delusion or the grift. Is it possibly both? I don't know, but you can't cozy up to power and say that the world is a prison planet run by
Yeah.
reptilians, for too long, basically. So
Soon you find yourself becoming one of the reptilians.
it um maybe I haven't really but my hair is shorter, I've noticed. Here's the thing, and I want to talk about this for just a second. Um my long hair, my long afro sort of thing was a trademark of mine, and so the fact that I'm cutting my hair short now uh doesn't give me like a huge identity crisis, but it does a little bit, right? The way that I'm kind of embracing it is it's sort of, I think I've mentioned this before. It's sort of the Grover, right? My beard hair and the hair in my head are the same length, and so I'm actually fuzzy like an animal, like a dog, if you will, or a muppet. Um, More than, I mean, even though I'm not as hairy. But the whole reason that this is happening, you can see this on the chat, is I really am losing like more of my hair than I used to, right around this area. And so my long hair doesn't look the way that I think it should. That's
Right.
number one.
Yeah.
But then number two, it also gets in the way like something crazy for a lot of activities. I used to wake up when my hair was really long. I used to wake up because my hair would brush my face, and I'd like freak out. Um,
I
so
just
yeah,
shaved this morning. As a matter of fact, I had gone quite a while longer than I normally do without
yeah.
shaving.
For those of you that can't see in the chat, Ben has gone full pink from Pink Floyd The Wall. No eyebrows whatsoever. Really short, slick
The
back hair.
reason I shaved this morning is because my mustache got to the point where the hairs were long enough to touch my front lip,
Yeah,
and I'm like, "You're, it's time for you to go now." My head hair is getting long enough to the point where when I put earbuds in, it catches a little bit of hair,
yeah.
and so it's time for a haircut. But
there
yeah.
are stages when you're growing your beard, because I've had a much longer beard. I don't think you've ever had as long of a beard as
Oh,
I've
never.
had.
Yeah, no.
There are stages, right? So the first one is when it touched your lip, right?
Yeah.
Then you get used to it after a little while, and then it starts to get inside your mouth on the corners. And
Yeah.
then it grows out where you can sort of pull it. And then when you eat apples, it gets in between your teeth. And then you can actually go past that stage as well until you cannot drink uh, anything liquid. You can't eat soup, whatever, without it getting in the hair on your mouth. Like
Yeah.
it will get in there, and there's nothing you can do. And that was kind of the last straw for me, when I was like, you know what? I actually enjoy not having this happen to me. And
Yeah.
so,
I realized that I had gotten to the point where I either needed to shave or trim. And I'm like, I am not
yeah,
interested in maintaining facial hair. it's
yeah.
time to go. So
I'm working it out so where I basically have a maintenance run every week.
yeah.
Like on Saturday or Sunday, I go over the hair once, I go over the beard once, and then throughout the week, I'll use a little trimmer. I still trim my beard. George Carlin taught me how to trim my beard. He has a thing in his act where he talks
Personally.
about the correct way to shave your face,
Come
and
here,
that's what I
kid. I'm
do.
going to show you how to shave. I'm going to show you how to shave.
Yeah.
Well, I don't remember the routine where he talked about that.
It might have been in his book. He wrote a book, and I had it.
He's written a couple of books.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's in that book. He has a list of things that he could do without, and one of them that still sticks with me, I think, is a guy who can't stop smiling wearing a bow tie of human skin, something to that effect. It's just he was a really interesting guy.
I think Carlin, also, we may have talked about this too. Carlin might be kind of a fan of the right if he were still alive and doing comedy today.
Yeah, I don't know though. I mean, this is something that Jennifer brought up, is that George Carlin specifically is someone that you couldn't predict what he would end up doing. I could see him. The thing about the water, right, where he says, "How's the water here?"
Yeah.
Everybody's carrying around their own bottle of water. I could see Carlin doing an anti-mask thing, right? But I could also see him doing a mask thing where he's like, I'm old. You guys are gonna kill me, because you can't. It's a piece of,
Yeah.
the the Earth plus plastic versus a place for my stuff. Like, I think that if this makes sense, his methodology we can predict, but which side he would flip on, I don't think we can. I don't think we know.
These, one thing to say, actually, I want to mention, so Drunk is with us. Say hello to Drunk.
Hey,
and
Drunk.
he says those arrows are interesting. Those arrows are actually to tell the talent where to look. They're at the bottom of cameras. That's why we have arrows there. So that's how you know where the lens is.
That's of course in the theater where he's
In the theater,
where he's sitting. Not the talent me telling me where to look, because if I were doing that, I'd be looking like this, which I think is incorrect.
So, Carlin's interesting. Did you watch that Judd Apatow documentary on George Carlin?
No, but maybe I will.
It's really, is it, or did Apatow do the Shandling? Actually, I think Apatow did the Shandling documentary, and Carlin's documentary was different. But what I didn't realize was that Carlin, I mean, I knew that Carlin had like a tone shift somewhere in the middle of his career where he went from like, these, life is crazy to, life is crazy. And it was mostly because Rick Moranis did an impression of him on SCTV, kind of taking him down a notch. Because at that point, his comedy had gotten kind of stale. So Carlin was like, I guess I got to do something. And so his whole like embracing the counterculture, sort of like antagonist to the status quo comedian, sort of took hold. But one of the reasons, so he is able to change his comedy, right? So he might, were he alive today and still doing comedy, I think he might have still been. He might have still been able to change, like we said with most other comedians, and not maybe become like a darling of the right. But part of me wants to think that he would still be stuck in his ways that are very not cool today. Like he famously would use the N word in his routines, right?
Yeah.
And back in like late 90s, early 2000s, when he did that, people were like, all right, well, I mean, I guess you kind of got a point. But now I think he would be like, everybody would be like,
Yeah.
no, you don't. I don't care what you're commenting on, what context you use it. Don't say that word. You know, he'd have a producer at HBO saying, we're not gonna air that, and Carvin would be like, then f you, I'm out. You know, I'll
Yeah,
go play the
it
clubs.
is it is really interesting to think about also what I mean, would he still have a platform? You know, like a large platform. Could he change the conversation? Like, you know, I think the closest thing, you know, with like for instance, mm, okay, I'm just going to use as an example Ricky Gervais in Great Britain, right?
Yeah.
When Ricky Gervais did all of his anti-trans stuff, um, Rowan Atkinson defended him, which was weird. But they're weird in Great Britain about this stuff. I've noticed. Like, like there are lots of people where you're like, really, really, this is the hill
Yeah.
you want to die on, kind of thing.
Their
More so
sensibilities are
than
different.
here, I think. Um, you know, it here normally when somebody is like vocally anti-trans, they're usually, you know, very like no one's surprised. It's like, oh yeah, of course, you know. But when that guy who did Father Ted and the IT crowd like did that heel turn, it was like, wow, really? That's a little crazy because I liked your stuff and now I don't know how to feel, uh, you know, about you. Like, am I sorry for you? Am I mad at you? You know, that sort of thing.
I don't know what that situation is. You're not talking about Richard Iowade, but the other guy.
No, 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 not the stars of it. Graham Linden. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Uh, but he was like the showrunner of those things,
Oh, okay.
writer, producer, kind of thing. And famously for me, got into a big argument with Michael Kupperman, who did Snake and Bacon, the comic, uh, about
I do not know
trans
the words you
issues.
speak. Okay,
Yeah.
but this guy
Anyway,
was, but this guy, the like the showrunner of the IT crowd.
two people who I thought, you know, would see eye to eye on a lot of different
Yeah,
things blew up in Twitter about that issue,
yeah.
uh, of whether or not trans people should be allowed to be people,
John
which, you
Cleese
know,
also kind
I'm in
of.
favor of personally.
John Cleese also has sparked some controversy on Twitter because he is very much very vocal against cancel culture in comedy, and is like, you can't say anything anymore and it's terrible and comedy's getting ruined, and people are like, you can still be funny, you
Yeah,
know. They're just, you know, society is kind of moving on past your sorts of senses of humor.
I think I mentioned this before, but I still find Monty Python funny for sure. The more I age, the more I really appreciate Graham Chapman, and what he brought to the group.
Yeah.
Um, but the other thing is, uh, I was in Target and I was looking around at all the different models and things like that, and there was no, you know, for their displays and stuff, and there was no, you know, like white guy, like the Sears catalog white guy. And I was like, you know what? I said this to Jennifer. I could go the rest of my life without ever seeing a marketing photograph targeted at my demographic ever again, right?
Right.
Like
Because I just don't like being marketed to, so it doesn't really
well,
matter.
not just that, but even like if, and I'm serious about this. If I watch a TV show and there's not a 50-year-old, Gen X white dude in the cast, that'll be fine. That'll be
Yeah.
fine for the rest of my life, and I will still enjoy watching stuff. In fact, I don't know about you, but I find things much more interesting when they're about people who aren't me, you know, that kind of thing. So I feel as though, hopefully, and I could be wrong, but maybe our generation will, kind of embrace that and have it be less of a thing. We'll see. But I will say this also. I'm doing an audiobook, producing an audiobook. And when I say producing, I'm not producing, I'm executive producing. I'm giving Jennifer the money to do an audiobook of Mara and the Magicians.
Ah.
And it was one of these things of I've got a lot of different characters in it, but one of the main characters is a woman of color. And it's like, okay, so here's the thing. I'm not casting it like a film. I'm doing the audiobook of it. Do I, have a responsibility to not have Jennifer do the audiobook of it? And I realized no, because if she wasn't going to be doing the audiobook of it, I wouldn't be doing an audiobook of it. Right? It's
Right.
one of these situations where she's a member of my household. I can collaborate with her here. I can explain things, and I know her, and I feel as though the fantasy that the character lives in, right, makes it, and I'm saying all this very slow, and I'm being methodical about it because I'm still, like I might revisit this audio in, 5 years ago. Yeah, I was wrong. It's possible. But I really do, it really hinges on that thing of would I be making this into an audiobook if I did not know Jennifer and want her to do an audiobook of one of my books? Probably no. The other option was Love in the Time of Zombies, and that one, if you remember, is a disgusting romance novel. Not something that I would want to pay her to read.
It's an interesting question. And before I say that, I'll just say that Drunk commented, Ben, if I somehow live to make it to the future, I'm gonna tell people you were Steven Spielberg. I don't quite, Drunk. I think you missed the conversation about how I just shaved. I don't quite have the beard that Spielberg has.
But you got the glasses for sure.
I got the glasses and the cameras.
And
Um,
his cameras and his of course iconic
and his little
yellow
dog
and
too,
black plaid shirt.
and his fingerless gloves.
Yep.
Just because it's cold in here. But actually,
Spielberg.
I actually turned the heat off because it's so loud it disrupts the sound. But I'll have to turn it right back on after we start.
I keep my heat on and don't care. And I apologize to our listeners.
Well, our heat is super loud. You know what it is like. What it sounds like. But when we stop, I'm gonna turn back on because there's a figure drawing class in here later on, which will have a nude model, and it is
hey.
There's a cold snap here basically everywhere, but also here in Seattle, and so it is quite cold here in the theater. But the question of like representation in audiobooks is one that I haven't really heard before because that's big in Hollywood where they want to have gay actors do gay roles, trans actors do trans roles. Of course, we've had we haven't had blackface in a while, which is great. But in terms of like audiobooks,
I think what you mean to say is we haven't had blackface in a while, and it is great that we haven't had blackface in a while.
that we haven't had
just
it
so
in a
that
while.
just so that people can't just lift that
I
audio out and.
I doubt anybody would misconstrue what that meant. Anyway,
Yeah.
I don't listen to audiobooks, so I don't know. Like, if you have a white reader, I'm sure they changed their voices to identify different characters.
Yeah, so that's definitely. I mean, we talked about this. This is one of the first things. We're not doing any sort of. Well, first of all, and not to get too big into Mara and the Magicians, but you know, um, the world of Long City, where Mara and the Magicians takes place, is a world populated by. So it started out with mythical creatures and stuff, and then these French guys showed up, and then after that, this train load of children showed up, and so even though, and we're now in like a couple of generations who have lived in this area, so while they have sort of American accents, they're not Americans, and so Mara, the main character, doesn't have an American accent. She grew up on a train with conductor Shrike. So the basic thing is that Jennifer, for her, is doing kind of a neutral, her reader voice, right?
Right.
And this is the big thing: doing her reader voice as the main character, and then other characters are going to have, like, different regionalisms and stuff like that. But the main thing is that, yeah, I think, and if I'm wrong, I don't want anyone to tell me because I will be embarrassed for them. But I really think that a book reader who is not African American, oh gosh, I hope, would not try to put on what they think that accent should sound like in order to read their book.
I mean, there are.
If that makes sense.
I'll say this at the outset: representation matters, and it's great
Yes.
that there are non-white characters as leads and non-white stories as primary stories. But I do know that I got into a big conversation on the comic book podcast years ago because there was an issue of should non-white stories and non-white characters be written and drawn by white people? Do those count?
The answer is no. And that is, me saying that what I did. So my novel's done, right? I wrote it. It exists. And this is what I would say. If the story that I was telling was about the African American experience, and if that was the main thrust of my story, it would not be my place to write it, right? And I would even go so far as to say that me giving a character who did not grow up under those circumstances, the genetic makeup of an African American person was also not cool, right? This was definitely do as I say, not as I do, I would say. I mean, the big thing was at the time that I wrote it, I didn't want to have it be another young adult novel about. See, at the time that the time that I was writing this, there were young adult novels that were being made into movies where they were casting people of color as main characters, and people were complaining, saying this character was white and they were always white. Why are you making them an African American character?
Yeah.
Right. And the author said, well, I never intended one way or the other, or the studio said, this is what the source material was. So at the time that I wrote it, I said, okay, fine. You know, you guys are going to complain about how you thought that this was a white character, and so you're mad that this character was played by a person of color. My thought was, okay, I'm going to write a young adult novel in the genre of, you know, some of these things that are getting made into movies with people mad, and I am going to make the character, the main character, a person of color, so that you know, again, you the faceless people trolling other folks on the internet or complaining about it, can't say that this character was always supposed to be white. That was my reasoning behind it. And after that, you know, after the novel was done, you know, the whole thing about making sure that you have, you know, you're telling a story that's yours to tell. Having sensitivity readers, you know, to make sure that you don't put anything in there that would be triggering to a demographic or a group, all that sort of stuff. Um, I was introduced to that thing way after that sort of stuff, way after I had written the novel. So the big thing is that when the audiobook is being done, you know, that's something that we're going to be sensitive towards. But I feel like, and I don't know any other way to say it other than, if someone wants to take me to task and say that I was wrong to write this and have the main character uh, be a person of color who grew up in a place where they were, you know, cut off from their like heritage and became something that wasn't, you know, true to that group, I would say that I think that they are correct. I would not defend myself against that choice that I made, but and I'll, you know, I'll say that this here, at the time that I did it, and you know, I that's still a part of me. That was kind of a way for me to explore my own adoption experience, and then meeting my parents and having them be people that I didn't, you know, expect. So that was kind of the genesis of it. And you know, I would say someone could argue and say, well, you know, my skin color and my experience of being, you know, a person of color growing up, uh, does not equate to and doesn't, you know, should not be used as a metaphor for your adoption experience. And I would say again, yes, you are absolutely correct. Um, but I still like the novel. I still wrote it and enjoy the concepts and characters and everything like that. And I feel as though, again, if I had set out to write a novel about what it was like growing up as an African American in the United States in the 1800s, that would not be my story to tell, but that's also not the story I'm telling. So it's this is high fantasy, takes place in a different world. Um, and again, every time that I say it, I think of what the argument would be against it. Well, that's kind of a cop out. Why did you, you know, why did you still do it? Uh, and by do it mean, you know, have your main character be a young black girl. Why did you do that instead of an elf or whatever? And it's because, you know, she's still human. She's not a fantasy character. She is a person, um, who, again, I was using as a version of myself that may have been incorrect. And I've been going on about this for a while, and I realize that I'm getting into that thing where I just spin out of control. So and the thing is that, um,
Here's my thought on it.
yeah,
I don't. You're right in that the stories, the cultural stories of non-white people shouldn't be written by white people. I think we can agree on that
yeah,
as a baseline. I don't think it should be out of the realm of imagination for a white author to write a non-white character. That just seems absurd.
right.
Because if you're writing
And
a story, you want to have diversity in it.
right. And the way that I would, and again, I I I fully, I would not argue that I am right to someone telling me I'm wrong, if that makes sense. I think there's room for nuance in that, and that if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't necessarily have made the same choices.
Right.
But I still like, again, I still like what I wrote, and so what I'm about to say, again, is it defensible? Maybe not, but this is kind of my way of thinking about it. After I had written the book, and the whole thing about should should a person of color be able to play a character in Dungeons and Dragons who is an African American analog, not a drow, not an elf that has pitch black skin, not an orc who is, from, you know in the mind of the person, uh a a separate culture from humans, but like an actual black person. Should they be able to do that? And the answer that came out of that is, as a player, you shouldn't, right? Because it goes to that whole thing of you're doing the story of someone, you're approximating, you're guessing as to what that person's story might be like. And you're going to be doing a bad caricature if you're not part of the culture. That's that idea. But aside from that, or another facet of that, is that for dungeon masters, people who are running a D&D game, you do want that diversity. And so they they being dungeon masters have a responsibility to include diverse characters, especially at a table where there isn't that much representation. But in doing that, then they have a responsibility to the people, to do their research and be as respectful as possible.
Yeah.
And when I read that, looking back on the novel, I think I did a good enough job of making Mara someone who the reader would care about, and someone who reacted like a person. And
There's
I'm hoping that happens.
there's an interesting concept that I learned a number of years ago that would not have even crossed my mind were I not educated on it, and it kind of goes it goes like in parallel with a white person writing a non-white character, like from a cultural perspective, not just like as a this person just happens to be black,
Yeah.
and also like a white person playing a person of color in a role-playing game, and that's the concept of virtual blackface. And that is, say, if
Yeah.
you're on a Slack channel and you react with an emoji, and you're a white person, and the emoji you react with is like a black woman with big hair, that is now completely wrong, regardless of the context with which you did it.
Yeah. not only that, but GIFs lots of times are used in sort of the same way,
Yeah, like
like
reaction gifs.
reaction GIFs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The the thing that people keep saying, and the it's often said in frustration, or well, I guess I just can't do anything anymore. And the answer to
That's
that,
what a hats and
to me,
suspenders guy
is,
would say.
yeah, that's what a hats and suspenders guy is. But also, yeah, yeah, maybe
Yeah.
don't do as much.
Which is an interesting. I
Again,
mean, it's an interesting little conundrum because so obviously as a white person, I can't put a smiley face emoji on a Slack channel that is a non-white person. However, the standard color is yellow, and so now yellow is like a terrible color for another a terrible representative color for another culture. And so, is that at some point are the yellow happy faces now going to be virtual? I don't know what you would call it even.
well, also, it's if it is called yellow face. It is a thing
Yeah,
that is a. But here's the other thing, and I think you would agree with me on this. People who go out of their way to pick the white flesh color for their thumbs up also look a little weird. It's also a little bit like, huh, I wonder why that was so important.
yeah. It's
Uh,
also I
Interestingly enough,
I had an
my
internet issue here, so our delay is a little terrible right now. But I do
yeah,
have I am on a Discord, and there is one person on one specific channel that picks the flesh color thumbs up emoji, but every once in a
yeah.
while it looks a little darker than it should, and I have no idea if I need to like call that out or if it's just like our monitors are calibrated differently.
Okay, so this is a thing that I will say for sure. My brother, for his thumbs up are always the darkest skin color. And I I had a conversation with someone about it. It wasn't you, I don't think. It might have been you, but I think it was another friend of mine. That was a Seinfeld conversation. Like I was getting Seinfeld flashbacks of, do you think he knows? Do you think should I tell him? Because I don't know if he knows, and I would
Right.
feel weird saying something about it. So
Yeah.
but the basic thing I would say, just to wrap the whole thing up is, I again, I greatly enjoy my novel. I want to hear Jennifer read it. That's a big thing, and I'm not going to be doing a huge marketing campaign for it or anything to that effect. It is, it's available. I don't know if you've read it, but it's pretty good, I think.
I have not read it.
And if something, here's the thing: the worst case scenario, of course, is that someone reads it and becomes offended, and they don't like it, and they get mad. Actually, the worst case scenario is people don't read it, but find out about, uh, you know, that aspect of it and complain about it without reading it. That would be the worst thing.
Oh, that would never
Obviously.
happen.
Yeah. Um, but the best case scenario would be, yeah, somebody reads it, they really like it, and they want to make a movie about it, and then the casting thing happens, and people get mad, uh, and I get to say, well, no, that's exactly, I always thought Mara was a white person. Well, no, and if you didn't read the book because it it mentions that she's
Or they
not.
cast Tilda Swinton as Mara.
Oh, have we talked about that already? The Tilda Swinton thing?
We've talked a lot about that in the past.
Oh, I think yeah, the ideas that filmmakers there was a list. I don't know if I read it on this podcast, but there are filmmakers who, when the studios say we have to cut this thing because it won't do well in China if we have it,
Yeah.
and for those listening who didn't know this already because you didn't listen to the other podcast where we were talking about it,
What have you been doing
this
with your year?
the screenwriter, I believe it was the screenwriter, gave an interview where he mentioned that it was mostly because you have this character who's supposed to be from Tibet, but China is very what would we say, sensitive whenever Tibet is mentioned because for them Tibet is China and not Tibet, and it should not be considered its own thing.
I believe Brad Pitt is still not allowed to show his movies or even go to China because of the movie 7 Years in Tibet.
Uh-huh. Interesting. And you know who else isn't allowed in China?
Why, it's
Edward.
Edward, the Cheweagle.
Yeah, I believe
Or
that
the
he would
or as I like to call him, the Biwawa.
I believe that that he would have to be quarantined. I believe
Does he have
any
dog flu?
international travel of an animal there has to be quarantined. And that's something I just imagine him sad alone in a crate going, I guess they don't love me anymore. That's how I can feel sad. Is when I think about Edward being sad,
So if you
for
ever
sure.
needed to cry on camera, that's where you go.
Yeah. Um, so hey, speaking about crying on camera, is there any interaction with our fans at all,
Nope.
Ben?
I think drunk bounced. Nothing from Steven.
Okay. So I will say that I don't think I've cried during our podcast once. I'm
I don't
pretty
believe you
sure.
have either.
Um, and I was talking to Jennifer about how when I was a kid, I would cry at least once a day, and how I would get so upset and I couldn't stop myself from crying. And she rightly went, well, you were having meltdowns. And I'm like,
Yeah.
right, that's right. And there was something that would happen to me, and I thought about it because it might have happened to you as well. I don't know. When you were a kid and you got upset and you cried, did you get red blotches on your face? Like not just red face, but actual, like what looked like measles, maybe?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't think so. But it's possible.
Because
I
I
don't know.
thought maybe it was
I
a
I
skin tone
tried not
thing.
looking into a mirror when
Oh yeah.
when I was crying.
Um, that you just pointed out something that I didn't really think about, but I would look at myself when I was crying. Uh,
You
and be
vain.
really yeah, exactly. I told you about that when I was at University of Missouri Columbia. I was asked to leave the gym because I kept looking at myself in the mirror while I was lifting my weights a little bit too
Who's
intently.
looking huge, man? Who's looking huge?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, speaking about looking huge, by the way, I think I mentioned this before, but I'm 15 stone. Did you ever find out how many stone you were?
No, but I can look it up.
Yeah, 15 stone, 210 pounds, Ben. That is what I weigh at this time. And I gotta
I
say,
uh
oh,
uh,
sorry, go ahead.
me fully naked because I do have a scale in my bathroom and every
Yeah.
once in a while I weigh myself. I hover between like 152 and 155. So I'm going to say
Hey.
155. That's 11.07 stone.
Yeah, so there we go. I I fluctuate. I can lose weight if I want to. But the more I've been thinking about it, now here's the only reason why I really would want to is I sometimes have trouble breathing when I'm asleep. But
That's no good.
other than that, I feel really okay with my weight. I never have been up until the past, whenever. But I feel like I move okay, right? My knee used to hurt a lot. It doesn't hurt right now anymore. Um, and when I change my diet, I don't think as well. Like I find it harder to come up with words and things like that. I sometimes, still have problems now, but it's even worse when
Yeah.
I'm reducing my calorie intake. So,
You need that energy. I mean,
yeah,
calories are energy.
exactly. So yeah, I am now 60 more pounds than you, Ben. And I think if we were to be performing, we could use that to our advantage. If you remember, the plan was for me to get the same weight as you, and that way we could switch. Because
Right.
I think we're around the same height. I'm 5'9". How much?
Yeah. I'm probably I used to be 5'10", but I think I'm shrinking.
Yeah, Jennifer is now 4'11", I think.
Yeah.
She used to be 5 feet.
I wanted to not believe that, but the last time I went to the doctor, I was like, "Yep, I lost an inch," and I was even
Yeah.
standing up straight.
So it is a possibility for us to do that, right? To be
Yeah.
the same. But if I weigh more than you, there's a better chance of me being able to like support you if you wanted to like, hang off of something and I'm holding you up by like a rope or something.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Get a
We
rope.
we'd figure it out. Hey, speaking of figuring it out, we've made it through another podcast. And let me just say, Ben, 365 episodes. I am happy as always to be talking to you. It's great that we've been able to maintain this connection, even though I live so far away.
We've
Uh,
yeah, totally. I hear what you're saying, and I was just gonna say that we should. It's early in the year now. It's only February. We should create a thing called the GudeLaurance Challenge for in 2024. We see if people can listen to a show a day.
yes. Now, granted, it's tough because no one listens to the show now, so
That's why it
it's
would
going
be
to
a
be hard for
challenge.
them to. Yeah, exactly. So if you how many down are people still downloading? Are there still people who have us in their podcast?
Yeah, I mean, if archive.org is to be believed, which is where the show is served from, it gets about 20 to 30 downloads a week.
So maybe someone is listening, and hey, if you are listening, why not go back to episode 1 and listen to a show a day and
The
see if you can
only
do it?
episode 1, the only show when Paul and I were in the same room.
Hey, isn't that crazy?
And then
But true,
somebody had to go and move.
when you came to visit me, we didn't record the podcast.
We didn't record a podcast. We recorded a video, but not a podcast.
Yes. Was the video that we recorded a Doctor Who video?
No, it was at the City Museum.
I did the Doctor Who video remotely
Yes.
then. Yes. Okay,
American
Ben.
Doctor Who Part 3? I would say.
Yes. And as always, stay after the show, Ben, for more discussion about things.
More life updates that are not podcast worthy.
Indeed. And I will talk to all of you next week when I talk to Ben next week. And Ben,
Paul?
until then, please keep it wrong.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Keep it wrong, and I'll talk to you next week.